Dolly Parton, America's sweetheart with the big hair and even bigger heart, has spent decades captivating fans. But behind the rhinestones and hit songs, there's a side to her story that few have heard. Secret fights, bitter betrayals, and stars who swore they'd never work with her again. One even tried to steal her biggest hit. She kept quiet for years, but now the truth is out. These are the singers Dolly Parton couldn't bear to work with. And once you hear what really happened, you'll never see her the same way again. Now grab some popcorn and get comfy on the couch as we reveal the fascinating story of these characters. It's sure to shock you. From a one-room cabin to country royalty, the rise of Dolly Parton. Dolly Rebecca Parton was born on January 19, 1946, in a one-room cabin in the hills of Locust Ridge, Tennessee. No running water, no electricity, and 12 kids under one tiny roof. Her father, Lee, was a farmer and construction worker who couldn't read or write, but to Dolly, he was the smartest man she ever knew. Her mother, Avie Lee, had a dozen children by age 35 and passed down a deep love of music, faith, and storytelling. For Dolly, music wasn't a dream, it was survival. With no money for entertainment, the Parton kids sang in church and harmonized on the front porch. And it didn't take long for everyone to notice that Dolly's voice was something special. By age 10, she was already on local radio and TV in Knoxville. After high school graduation in 1964, she didn't waste a second. Dolly packed a suitcase and left for Nashville with nothing but grit, a pen, and a voice that could melt stone. She started by writing songs for other artists, but Dolly didn't just want to write hits. She wanted to be the hit. In 1967, she broke through with Dumb Blonde, a cheeky anthem that proved she was nobody's fool. It was just the beginning. The girl from the Smoky Mountains had arrived, and she wasn't going anywhere. The split that built a legend. Dolly Parton's big break came in 1967 when she joined the Porter Wagner show. And just like that, everything changed. Suddenly, she was in living rooms across America every week. Audiences couldn't get enough of her duets with Porter. Their chemistry sizzled, the harmonies were magic, and Dolly's charm was impossible to ignore. But Dolly was never meant to be anyone's sidekick. By the early 70s, she launched her solo career and took off like a rocket. In 1973, Jolene dropped and became an instant anthem. Then came I Will Always Love You, a song so powerful it crossed decades and genres. Yes, Whitney Houston made it iconic, but Dolly, she owns it, literally and legally. She's made millions from that one song and never once boasted. By the 80s, Dolly was everywhere: music, movies, merch. She starred in 9 to 5 with Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin and proved she could act just as well as she could sing. And while other stars were buying yachts, Dolly opened Dollywood in 1986, a full-blown theme park in her hometown of Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, built to give back to the community that raised her. But make no mistake, behind the sequins and sweet southern smile is one of the shrewdest business minds in the industry. She's penned thousands of songs, won a shelf full of Grammys, earned a spot in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and started the Imagination Library, donating over 200 million books to kids worldwide. Still, even angels have their limits. For all the kindness, Dolly's career hasn't been without tension. There have been feuds, betrayals, and people who tried to steal her spotlight or control her altogether. And one of the first and most explosive was the man who helped make her famous, then tried to own her career. This is the story of Dolly Parton versus Porter Wagner, and it's juicier than you think. When mentorship turns to mayhem, Dolly Parton versus Porter Wagner. Before Dolly Parton became a global icon, Porter Wagner was already a country music powerhouse, a glitter-suited showman with charm, a sharp business sense, and one of the most watched TV shows in America. The Porter Wagner show wasn't just popular, it was the gateway to stardom. And in 1967, that gateway opened for a young, big-haired talent named Dolly Parton. Replacing fan favorite Norma Jean, Dolly wasn't welcomed with open arms. Crowds booed, angry letters poured in, but Porter stood by his choice. And Dolly? She smiled through the criticism, determined to prove she belonged. And she did. Their chemistry was electric. Their duets burned up the charts. On screen, they looked like country music's dream team. But behind the scenes, things weren't so harmonious. Porter didn't just want a duet partner, he wanted control. He called the shots, what Dolly wore, where she performed, what they sang. At first, she played along. After all, he gave her a shot when few others would. But Dolly wasn't just a voice. She was a visionary, a writer, a future mogul. And the more her star rose, the tighter Porter tried to hold on. By the early 70s, Dolly was writing songs that didn't fit their act. She craved creative freedom. Porter, rooted in tradition, couldn't see her as an equal. What started as mentorship had become a cage. Finally, in 1974, after years of quiet frustration, Dolly broke free. She didn't just leave, she left with grace, even writing "I Will Always Love You" as a goodbye tribute to the man who launched her career. But behind the beautiful farewell was a legal storm. Porter sued her for breach of contract, demanding a cut of her future success. It was messy, it was painful, but it was also the moment Dolly took full control of her destiny, and she never looked back. The $3 Million Betrayal, when Porter sued Dolly. To the public, Dolly Parton's exit from the Porter Wagner show seemed smooth, but behind the scenes, trouble was brewing. In 1979, 5 years after she left, Porter shocked everyone by suing Dolly for $3 million. He claimed she broke their contract and owed him a cut of her success. Dolly was heartbroken. Porter had been her mentor, her partner. The lawsuit felt like a knife in the back. But instead of firing back, Dolly stayed quiet and settled out of court. "I didn't want to fight," she said later. "I just wanted to be free." It wasn't about money, it was about control. Porter couldn't accept that Dolly had outgrown the role he created for her. It hurt her deeply, but time has a way of healing. Years later, Dolly inducted Porter into the Country Music Hall of Fame, and when he was hospitalized in 2007, she visited him before his passing. Despite the pain, she never forgot what he meant to her. But the next person on Dolly's list? They said something that stunned the world, and she never let it go. Dolly versus Linda, when harmony turned to tension. They were the dream team: Dolly Parton, Linda Ronstadt, and Emmylou Harris, 3 powerhouse voices in country music who joined forces for what would become the legendary trio album. On the surface, it was pure gold, perfect harmonies, chart-topping singles, and Grammy wins. But behind the mic, especially between Dolly and Linda, the collaboration was anything but smooth sailing. The idea for trio sparked in the mid-1970s. All 3 women admired each other and wanted to create something special. But egos, busy solo careers, and label politics kept the project on ice for over a decade. It wasn't until 1987 that they finally released the first trio album, and it was a smash. The record went platinum and reignited interest in classic female harmonies. But while fans heard magic, what happened in the studio was far from harmonious. Dolly, a fast-working force of nature, liked to knock out vocals in 1 or 2 takes. Linda, not so much. She was a notorious perfectionist who could spend hours fine-tuning every breath and note. Dolly later admitted that working with Linda tested her patience like never before. "I wanted to scream at her," she once said, describing the endless studio hours. It was clear they admired each other, but their creative styles clashed hard. Emmylou often played referee, keeping the peace as best she could, and while Trio was a success, the tension lingered. They attempted a follow-up, Trio 2, in the early 90s, but once again, label issues and delays pushed the release to 1999. By the time it dropped, the damage was done. The chemistry wasn't the same, and neither was the friendship. What started as a groundbreaking collaboration fueled by mutual respect slowly unraveled under the weight of creative tension. While Dolly and Linda never publicly feuded in dramatic fashion, the behind-the-scenes strain was real and lasting. The music endures, but the friendship never quite recovered. Elvis versus Dolly, the song that sparked a silent showdown. When you think of Elvis Presley and Dolly Parton, you picture two of the biggest names in music history, the king of rock and roll and the queen of country. But behind the scenes of their star-studded legacies lies a lesser-known moment of quiet tension that nearly brought them together and then drove them apart. It all started with Dolly's most iconic ballad, "I Will Always Love You," a heartfelt farewell she wrote in 1973 when she parted ways with mentor Porter Wagner. The song wasn't just a hit, it was an emotional masterpiece, and it quickly rose to the top of the country charts. But while the world embraced Dolly's vulnerability, someone else was listening: Elvis Presley. Elvis loved the song. He wanted to record it. And for a moment, it looked like two legends would finally join forces. But there was a catch. Before Elvis could record the track, his manager, Colonel Tom Parker, made a demand. If Elvis sang the song, they would require ownership of half the publishing rights. That meant Dolly would lose control of the song she poured her soul into, and for the first time in her career, she had to make a gut-wrenching decision: give it up for Elvis or walk away. Dolly chose her integrity. She turned Elvis down. It broke her heart. She later admitted she cried all night, not just because of what she lost, but because of what could have been. Elvis never recorded the song. But years later, Dolly's decision would pay off, especially when Whitney Houston's version turned it into one of the biggest songs in history. To this day, Dolly still calls it one of the hardest choices she ever made. But it proved that even in the face of royalty, musical or otherwise, she wouldn't sell herself short. And that's what makes her not just a queen, but a legend. When Dolly said no to Elvis. In the mid-1970s, Elvis Presley was still the king, unstoppable, iconic, and known for taking other artists' songs and turning them into global hits. So when he expressed interest in recording Dolly Parton's "I Will Always Love You," it felt like a dream. For Dolly, a rising star in country music, it was the ultimate compliment. Elvis's notorious manager, Colonel Tom Parker, had a brutal reputation in the industry. He demanded that Elvis get at least 50% of the publishing rights for any song he recorded. That meant Dolly would lose half of the royalties and, more importantly, control over the most personal song she had ever written. Dolly stood her ground. She politely but firmly said no. "This is the most important copyright in my whole publishing company," she told Parker, "and I just can't do that." She was devastated. Elvis truly loved the song, and Dolly admired him deeply. But she knew the deal was a trap, one that could open the door for others to exploit her hard-earned success. The fallout was quiet but painful. Dolly later admitted she believed Elvis never forgave her for refusing the deal. There was no public feud, but the warmth between them faded. Elvis, known to be sensitive, was reportedly hurt, and Dolly felt it deeply. Still, she never wavered in her decision, and decades later, her choice would prove to be genius. Whitney Houston's version of "I Will Always Love You" would go on to become one of the most successful singles of all time, introducing Dolly's songwriting brilliance to a whole new generation, and earning her tens of millions in royalties. In hindsight, saying no to Elvis might have been one of the hardest decisions Dolly ever made, but it was also one of the smartest. It wasn't just about protecting a song, It was about protecting herself, her voice, and her worth in an industry that rarely gave women that kind of power. The day Howard Stern pushed Dolly Parton too far. Dolly Parton, sweet, humble, and rarely caught in scandal, was pushed to her limit in 2008. The culprit? Radio shock jock Howard Stern. Known for his wild, unapologetic antics, Stern crossed a serious line when his team aired a fake, vulgar interview made by editing clips from Dolly's audiobook, My Life and Other Unfinished Business. Using her real voice, they stitched together words to make it sound like Dolly said racist, crude, and deeply offensive things, including jabs at Kenny Rogers and Linda Ronstadt. It was meant as a joke, but fans weren't laughing, and neither was Dolly. In a rare public outburst, she called the stunt shocking, hurtful, and humiliating, and hinted at a possible lawsuit, something she never does. "In a blue million years, I would never say such vulgar things," she said, visibly devastated. Fans rallied behind her instantly. Country radio stations, longtime supporters, and even casual listeners slammed Stern's show for going too far. For a woman who built her legacy on kindness, what Stern did wasn't just disrespectful, it was unforgivable. Dolly versus Stern, from public humiliation to an unexpected reunion. When Howard Stern aired that infamous fake interview in 2008, splicing Dolly Parton's voice into something vulgar and offensive, he didn't flinch. No apology, no regret. He brushed it off as satire and claimed people were just too sensitive. But for Dolly, it wasn't comedy, it was personal. And it cut deep. Dolly didn't lash out publicly. She took the high road, as always, letting her fans and the media speak on her behalf. The two had no contact for 15 years. No apologies, no interviews, just silence and lingering tension. Then came 2023. In a move no one saw coming, Dolly walked into the Howard Stern Show studio to promote her genre-bending rock album, Rockstar. Fans were stunned. The woman who once threatened legal action was now sitting across from the man who humiliated her on air. To his credit, Stern was surprisingly respectful. He called her a legend, praised her voice, and kept the sarcasm in check. But the tension? You could feel it through the speakers. It was clear Dolly was there for business, not friendship. Still, she proved once again why she's one of a kind. Graceful, strategic, and in control, Dolly showed the world that even in the face of past humiliation, she can rise above it and rewrite the ending on her own terms. Dolly versus Wilco. When Jeff Tweedy took aim at a country icon, Dolly Parton's status in the music world is legendary. With a catalog full of timeless hits and a reputation for heartfelt songwriting, it's rare to hear anyone publicly question her talent. But in a surprising moment, Jeff Tweedy, the frontman of the critically acclaimed alt-country band Wilco, did exactly that, and it caused some serious waves. Tweedy, known for his introspective and often abstract lyrics, didn't hold back during an interview when asked about Dolly's music. While he acknowledged her impact on country and her place in music history, he criticized the quality of her songwriting, calling it superficial and lacking the depth he believed great songwriting required. According to him, Dolly's songs were more about catchy hooks than complex or thought-provoking content. In one especially pointed moment, he remarked, "She wrote Jolene and I Will Always Love You on the same day." I think she should have stopped after Jolene. It wasn't cruel, but it was undeniably dismissive, especially coming from someone many consider a songwriting heavyweight in his own genre. For Dolly, who's always been open about writing from a place of raw emotion and personal experience, Tweedy's remarks cut deep. Her songs may sound simple, but they've always carried stories of love, heartbreak, family, and survival. Reducing her decades-long career to surface-level songwriting felt more like a dig at her authenticity than just an opinion on style. Though Dolly didn't publicly respond, true to her grace and character, sources claimed she was hurt by the comments. After all, her music has connected with millions, and she spent years earning her respect, not just as a performer, but as a writer who pens every lyric from the heart. In the end, the clash between Dolly and Jeff Tweedy highlighted more than a difference in musical taste. It was a moment where one artist's critique clashed with another's legacy. And while Dolly took the high road, fans were quick to remind the world, depth doesn't always require complexity. Sometimes the simplest songs carry the loudest truth. Dolly Parton's legacy speaks louder than any critic. Dolly Parton's legacy as a songwriter isn't just impressive, it's legendary. Whether Jeff Tweedy or any other critic finds her lyrics deep enough doesn't change the truth. Dolly's music has touched millions of hearts around the world. Her songs have been covered by the biggest names in the business, everyone from Whitney Houston to Miley Cyrus, and have crossed genres, borders, and generations. Few artists in history can say their words became global anthems. Dolly can. From Jolene to Coat of Many Colors to I Will Always Love You, her catalog is filled with raw emotion, simple truths, and unforgettable melodies. These aren't just catchy songs, they're reflections of her life, her values, and her roots. Her ability to connect with audiences, whether on a front porch in Tennessee or on a global stage, is what makes her one of the greatest songwriters of all time. She doesn't just write lyrics, she writes stories people never forget. But Dolly's journey hasn't been all glitter and rhinestones. She's faced her fair share of feuds, industry snubs, and criticism, some subtle, some loud. From legal battles with Porter Wagner to clashing with fellow stars and enduring tasteless media stunts like Howard Stern's fake interview, Dolly has had to defend not just her work, but her character. And yet, through every scandal and slight, she's taken the high road with unmatched poise and strength. She's a woman who built an empire on her own terms, without compromising her values, her voice, or her vision. Critics may come and go, but Dolly's impact is carved into the very fabric of American music history. Now we want to hear from you. Which of Dolly's feuds do you think shaped her most as an artist? Was it the legal fight with Porter, the creative clash with Linda Ronstadt, or the bold move of standing up to Elvis and his team? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love deep dives into the dramatic, untold stories behind your favorite stars, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon, because there's plenty more where this came from.